Today I'm going to teach you how to make your own t-shirt throw. This one's 45 inches by 60 inches and it's backed with a beautiful soft minky fabric. This is the perfect gift for your graduate or just for you to have. If you have those basic sewing skills, you can do this yourself. The supplies you'll need are at least 12 shirts. I also got at least 2 yards of minky fabric. This is also on sale right now, so I ended up getting 3 yards of it, but at least 2 yards. And then you're gonna want some pellon. In the next slide, I'm gonna go through what kind of pellon is the right type of pellon to get. This is also referred to as webbing, but no matter what, it has to be fusible. I'm here at Walmart and I wanted to show you what to look for when you're trying to look for your pellon, your webbing, or interfacing. So go ahead and grab one of these and look at the very top. Do you see right here where it says fusible interfacing? You want to use that word, find that word fusible. And this one's only $1.97 per yard. 1 yard can cover almost 3 shirts. Like if you kind of cut them and piece them out, like the leftover interfacing, you can cover that 3rd shirt. Now I want to show you something that you do not want to find. This is called sew-in interfacing. Stay away from that. That is going to defeat the purpose. Another one you want to avoid is this easy knit tricot lining. It's just going to continue to keep the t-shirt stretchy. And the point of putting on a fusible interfacing is to prevent the t-shirts from stretching. By far, the very best is the Shape Flex SF 101. It's the most expensive for $3.44 a yard. However, it irons on your t-shirts beautifully and it really prevents those t-shirts from stretching or deforming. So if you're a beginner, definitely recommend spending that extra money on the SF 101. But if you're a seasoned sewer, you just want to save some money, then you can go with anything. Like I'm going to show you some examples. This is a medium weight interfacing that's fusible. You can use that. You can use featherweight. You can use lightweight. As long as it's fusible and it's interfacing, you can use it. Just stay away from the sew-in stuff and also that knit one that I was showing you. But yeah, this should prevent your t-shirts from getting too stretchy. Our next thing we want to buy is this quilt basting spray. This is ideal for adding on that really soft, stretchy minky fabric. And then by far, without a question, get a new blade for your rotary blade, which by the way, you need a rotary blade too. Also a clear ruler, some sharp scissors, and a rotary mat. Those are just essentials when you're making any quilts, but especially t-shirt quilts. First, you'll want to collect the t-shirts you're using for your throw quilt. I'm using 13 shirts with 2 of the shirts cut in half. Over here on the top corner, I can show you. They're not cut yet, but I'll be showing you that later. But it's going to be sewn together to create 1 square. So there's 3 squares across, 4 squares going down, and this should make the perfect size throw. To figure out how big the average square size you should make your t-shirt squares, I actually take this kind of pellon because it's see-through. I cut it into the size I'm guessing would be what most of the motifs on the shirts will fit. And I'm thinking 15 inches by 15 inches. That's usually how big each square is for like a men's large or a girl's large to medium. But anyway, I'm laying this on top of one of the biggest shirts and I'm seeing here that it fits perfectly. You want to have at least 1 inch from your motif over here to where there's a blank piece of fabric. So that way your seam allowance isn't going to cut out any of your motif. So we're going to cut most of these shirts 15 inches by 15 inches. To cut this, I'm actually going to use my clear ruler and just place it right along the edge here, using this pellon piece that I cut out as my guideline. And then I'll take my rotary blade and make sure this is sharp. I know I've already said that, but it makes all the difference, especially when you're cutting t-shirts. Go ahead and open up that blade, put it right here along the edge, hold that ruler nice and tight and cut it right across. Repeat that with all 4 sides and you'll have your square, and you can just throw out the back square. This back square on this shirt is blank. I'm going to show you in the next clip how to separate your t-shirts and then cut them out if you want to save your motif on the back. This shirt has a front motif and a back motif, and I might use the back in addition to the front. So for safety, I'm going to go ahead and cut this now. So I'm gonna first separate the shirts. And to do this, you're going to go here to the side edge. And a lot of times the side edge is easy to find because the shirt's been naturally kind of folded and left a crease here. You're gonna be cutting with your scissors all the way up this line and into this armpit and over here to where the arm edge starts. And you'll also be cutting along this arm edge into the shoulder seam and then ending right here where the neck edge starts. You'll repeat it on this side as well, and that will separate your shirt. Here's an example of the shirts that are separated. I've cut out all my 15 by 15 inch square shirts, and now I'm ready to cut the 2 shirts that I want to only be like the half size. So I'm taking my 15 by 15 pellon square, and I'm actually gonna cut this to be 8 inches wide, and it's still 15 inches long, or vice versa, 8 inches long, 15 inches wide. So I'm gonna just go ahead and cut this. I'm gonna go here to my rotary mat. I'm cutting it to 8 inches. And the reason I'm doing this is I know that 8 plus 8 is 16, and we want this to be half, but we want to include some seam allowance and a little bit of extra just in case. I just always rather have a little bit of extra that I can cut off rather than have a mistake and not have enough t-shirt to go around. So I'm gonna go ahead and use my rotary blade, cut this out, and use this bottom piece here as my pattern for those shirts. I'm gonna cut around this just like I did my 15 inch by 15 inch square. So now I have 2 half squares. I'm going to be sewing them together right here. I'll place this square right sides together, so that means the right side is facing the other right side. Match up this edge and sew it across. I'm gonna go ahead and use a 1/2 inch seam allowance. All right, here it is stitched together, and now the total length of it is 15 inches long, which you can see here, and 15 inches wide, which makes it another additional square. All of my squares are now cut, and I'm ready to add pellon to the back. You'll need to make sure your iron is filled with a lot of water for steam, because that's essential when you're adding pellon to the back of a t-shirt. And you'll take your pellon and cut them into 15 by 15 inch squares. So here we are at my iron. It's filled with water. It's on the highest level. And I have my lightweight pellon with the dotted side facing the wrong side of the t-shirt. So the right side of the t-shirt with the motif is face down on the ironing board, and this dotted part of the fusible webbing is going onto the back. So I'm using the cheaper webbing, so make sure you use a lot of steam, and you're not gonna wanna drag your iron across at all. You're actually gonna wanna just kind of lift it up and press it in place. All right, it's all fused to the back. All right, so all the squares are now covered with pellon or webbing, and it's time to sew them together. You can sew them together down the rows like this way, or you can go across this way. I typically go across this way. So I'll start here at the bottom. This is the right side of the square, and this is the wrong side of the square. Right side, wrong side. They need to be right sides together, and I'm gonna be sewing up the seam allowances 1/4 inch. So right sides together means they have to be facing each other, just like this, and you wanna match up the ends. All right, and then I'm gonna be stitching it down from here to here, knotting it beginning and end. Now I'm actually using my serger to do this. So I go ahead and just put my fabric right underneath the serger presser foot, and I don't pin this because the pins get in the way of the serger blade, which is right here. But the blade is really helpful because it cuts out any of the extra fabric, which a lot of times when you're making a t-shirt quilt, t-shirts are stretchy, so when you're ironing on the pellon, the edge just kind of gets, you know, it just kind of gets deformed a little bit, and there's just excess fabric. So it's really nice to have a serger to be able to cut that off. It also holds the t-shirts really well, so if the pellon isn't preventing some of your t-shirts from being as stretchy, the serger will make up for that. I will link a serger that's a really good price at the bottom of this video, but if you don't have a serger or you're not interested in buying one, you can do the exact same thing on your sewing machine. Make sure you sew it 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then I would pin it if you're using a sewing machine. So there it is all serged, and when you open it up, the two squares are stitched together. And I'm actually going to take my iron and press this down. Just be really careful not to iron any piece of your motif because that will burn. All right, so we're just gonna repeat what we just did with this next square. And you'll see here, do you see how my edges aren't perfect? This is because of just the way this fabric is for t-shirts, especially if they're older shirts. So you can go ahead and trim that off, especially if you're not using a serger or if you're like unsure of where the edge is. I will sometimes go there and just kind of clean up that edge. But you're gonna take the exact same, you're just gonna do the exact same thing, but treat this as like a square. Take this other shirt, place it right sides together on top of this edge, line up the edges, and sew or serge down the side. All my squares are now sewn together in 4 rows, so now I'm going to sew the rows together, and this is where you'll want to use your pins. And the first things you'll match up are these seam allowances. So where these t-shirts meet and where these t-shirts meet, you want those lines to be even. But you're gonna still do the same exact method by placing it right sides together and then just right away matching that seam. So it's best to make one of the seams lie like to the left and the opposing seam lie to the right. Seam allowance is matched, so one of the seams are facing one way and then the other side is facing the opposite way. And then when I open it up a tiny bit, you can see that line is matching up perfectly. You'll notice though that this green t-shirt, this one was really stretchy. It got a little bit bigger than the rest. If you're using a sewing machine and not a serger, I would recommend trimming this edge or any like edge now to make it nice and straight so you have a nice line to follow. And I repeated the same exact thing to this side. And then over here you can see there's another shirt that was really stretchy that's a little bit off. But again, the seam allowance is going this way, which means the seam on the other side is going the opposite way. And they're matched up really well. So I'm gonna go ahead and pin the rest of this row along this edge, and I'm going to serge it. All right, so this row is all serged together, and you'll notice I didn't even have to remove my pins. It's because I pinned it far away from the edge. If you're sewing it and not serging it, you can pin it close to the edge, which gives you a little bit more of a grip, but mine was fine with the serger. So don't worry about this edge yet. If you see like that little extra t-shirt, that's really common with t-shirt quilts because t-shirts are so stretchy, and even jersey types of t-shirts get even more stretchy, so that'll all clean up at the edge. But now that we're done, I'm gonna go ahead and unpin this and show you my first rows sewn together, and I'll repeat that with the rest of the rows. So you can see that seam allowance is matched up perfectly. Same with this one. That's your goal, matching up those seam allowances perfectly. It makes your finished result look so much cleaner. And I'm going to repeat that with those 2 rows, and then I'm sewing them all together. You can repeat it by just like adding this next row to this group and then the last row to the group. It's whatever, it's your choice. Those are my baby's toys over there because when he does wake up, I need to keep him entertained. But let's finish up this quilt. All right, so here it is. It's all sewn together. And now you'll see how the edges here are just not even. That just happens. T-shirts get stretched out. So I'm going to actually be trimming all around this to give it a nice clean feel. And then I'll teach you how to add the back. So my t-shirt top is now trimmed and all of the seams are pressed with the iron. Okay, I removed my t-shirt quilt and I placed the minky fabric down with the wrong side facing up and the right side on the bottom. And I'm going to actually place my t-shirt quilt or top on top of this and then measure so that there's 5 inches of the soft minky fabric all around, so 5 inches extra. Okay, so I placed my t-shirt top on top, and over here I have at least 7 inches of overhang, as you can see. So I'm going to take my quilt basting spray right here, and I'm going to spray this liberally over the back of this t-shirt top and lay it on the minky fabric. I'm gonna wait a minute, then I'm actually gonna pin this down in addition to the spray. And then I'm going to trim so that all of this is 5 inches all around. All right, so my entire quilt has been sprayed with the glue, and I also pinned all the seams and the corners. And now I'm going to be trimming off the minky fabric. So I'm measuring from the edge of the t-shirt quilt till 5 inches, and I'm using my fabric pen, and I'm just making a little mark at that 5-inch point. And I'm going to continue that all the way around until I have a pattern, and I'll be able to cut all around and have that accurate 5-inch fabric piece all around. All right, I have a line all the way around, and I'm going to start cutting that out. All right, it's all cut. There's 5 inches of extra fabric all around. And I'm not going to be quilting this quilt like where you see the stitching, but since I have very slippery minky dot fabric, or not minky dot, but regular minky fabric, I'm going to be stitching in the ditch. So I'm taking my machine and I'm sewing right into all the seam allowances, except for this square. I'm not going to go through here, but it'll kind of make almost like a grid going through, but it'll keep the quilt really strong, and I think it'll look a lot better. I'm starting with the middle seam, and to do this, I'm rolling up the extra fabric, and I'm bringing this to my sewing machine, and I'm going to be stitching it right down this first center line. Okay, I also base stitched all around the quilt, and base stitching is a wide stitching that goes a lot faster. Now to do the binding, the trick is to cut out 5-inch strips from your pellon. I'm just using lots of pieces of this because I just want to use up all the pellon. And you're going to fuse this onto this side of the binding. So the fusible little balls are going to be facing down on the binding. And press this just like you pressed this on the t-shirts. All right, so this is going to look a little funny, but I have all of my extra pellon around the edge, and as you can see, I just used pieces because I didn't want to waste any. If you're not into doing a bunch of different pieces, this would take probably an additional 3 to 4 yards of pellon. And then I ended up taking my serger and just serging around the edge just because this minky fabric is shedding so much. And this is a quilt for a client, so I just didn't really want to deal with all the little hairs from the minky. Okay, so here's my next step. I have this binding. I have this edge serged, so I'm not going to finish it off. I'm just going to literally lift this up and place it on top of that old stitching. So the old stitching is here. You want to overlap it a tiny bit. Now, if you don't have a serger, instead of just placing this directly on top of that, you're going to be folding this raw edge down first, then placing that on top. And even if you did have a serger and that's just the look you're going for, you can do that. I actually feel like the serged edge looks really cute with these t-shirt quilts. So I'm leaving my serged edge, and I'm pinning that really well. Like I'm talking, you want to make sure it's seriously pinned. To do the corner, you're going to take the far corner, point it so that way it overlaps this other corner by about 1/4 inch, and then fold the other pieces in place. So here's one piece, I'll pin that in place, and then I'm going to do the other piece. So you can see that's pinned up, and then I'm taking the other edge and doing the exact same thing, and I'll pin this in place as well. So it's pretty late and I've changed my mind again. Instead of keeping the serged edge, I'm just going to just fold this underneath and not have a serged edge. And you'll notice I'm using a lot of pins. That's super important. Make sure you use a lot of pins because this will get frustrating to sew otherwise. All right, so you can see everything is all pinned, and I'm going to the sewing machine and I'm going to do a really close to the edge stitch all the way around, And then on the corners over here, I'm not going to be stitching those with the machine. I'm going to hand stitch those closed. All right, I have my hand needle. It's all threaded. I left a loop at the bottom for a knot, and I just brought it through this first little edge here, and I'm pulling it, and I'm not actually going to pull it all the way through. Instead, I'm going to take my needle and go through that loop and then pull it tight. That's going to be a knot. So now my thread is attached to one edge, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to go over to this edge, pull my needle through, trying to kind of keep those stitches like pretty small. Now this minky fabric is extremely forgiving, so when you pull that nice and tight, you won't even see that stitch. So continue that like back and forth all the way down until you get to this bottom part, and then knot it. And now that corner is all stitched together. There is something so satisfying about finishing a blanket, and this one turned out so good. I'm so excited about it. If you guys like this, please subscribe to my channel. I'll have more videos similar coming soon.